Hey everybody, it's Bronco from Apex Vaulting. What I wanted to discuss this week, it's funny, I was posting, PR videos. I often post either instructional stuff, a video that might help vaulters, and then I also, a lot of times will post either practice video or PR videos from athletes that train at Apex. And it's always interesting to me, especially when I post, like, let's say a beginner, novice type video. A lot of times the comments I'll see are very interesting. Yes, obviously it's a beginner, novice kid. There's a lot of technique to improve upon, and everybody's got an answer, and they want to put their 2 cents in there. And I find it interesting because it always makes me think of like a bigger thing. I feel like often in the pole vault world, we have things a little bit backwards. I think with beginners, you have to be encouraging, right? Something like the pole vault is very technical, it's hard to learn. You have to encourage beginners, right? Because they're gonna doubt their abilities, especially if they're, let's say, jumping and someone in their session or their practice is a little bit more advanced than they are. They're gonna have doubts. They're gonna, oh man, can I even do this? So we should often be very encouraging to beginner, novice athletes. And obviously, like, hey, walking up to the athlete or coach at the meet who this kid's a beginner, novice, and be like, hey, coach, I don't know if you noticed, but takeoff wasn't great, or this or that. It's like, yeah, there's probably lots of stuff that the beginner, novice athlete has to do. They probably have to run better. They probably have to carry the pole better. There's a slew of things. And often with more advanced athletes, what I think is more important, once we're past beginner, novice, we have a more experienced athlete. I think the role of a coach at that point, and again, I'm very anti like putting negative comments on people's jumps, but like with experienced athletes, like they need to be humbled. Oftentimes, as a coach, you have to humble that advanced athlete, bring them back down to earth, because they already are winning meets or setting school records, and they're kind of like walking around with their puffing their chest out. And a coach has to be there to remind them, no, you still have work to do. When I think about other sports, stuff like boxing, powerlifting, football, wrestling, I love the stories. I love listening about coaches humbling the great athletes. I even remember hearing a story one time about the New England Patriots when Tom Brady was there, and they were in the middle of all those Super Bowl wins. And Randy Moss, who's Hall of Fame wide receiver in the NFL, gets traded to the Patriots, and he's at a practice. It's like one of those like spring practices or whatever. And I think, Randy Moss was kind of used to being treated very special everywhere he went because of his great talent. And they're having this practice, and Tom Brady throws an interception or something in the practice, and Bill Belichick loses it on Tom Brady. Just tears him apart. And Randy Moss turns to whoever he's next to and says, he talks to Tom like that? Person nodded. And it was in that moment Randy knew, okay, the Patriots are different. Because if you're holding Tom Brady to that standard, you're certainly going to hold me to that standard and everybody else on this team. And I think that's the thing. Like, if you're coaching the vault, you have beginners, you have to try your best to be patient. And listen, I'm not perfect at this either. But you have to be patient, be encouraging, help that beginner, novice kid. But when you have someone who's talented and they're experienced, oftentimes what you have to do is humble them. If they're not humbling themselves, you have to humble them, right? I've had experienced, talented athletes who, they are very humble. First to practice, last to leave. Don't skip a workout. Don't miss a set. Don't miss a rep. Do every drill. Great. makes my life easy as a coach. But when I have an experienced athlete who's talented and they're not humble, I have to humble them. I will continue to remind them about every drill that they're not figuring out, every workout that they're not doing, and just keep humbling them. I think too often in the pole vault community, you have an athlete who starts to jump high, they've got a lot of natural ability, everybody treats them like gold. And that's just not the case because, even those beginners, right, novice kids, once they get a little bit more experience, at the end of the day, we all have to put the work in. We have to learn at some point. There's no more magic tricks. There's no fast forward button. If you PR, great. That's awesome. Guess what? Tomorrow you still got to practice. You know what? You no-heighted, had a horrible meet. Guess what? You got to go to practice tomorrow. It never stops, and this is, like some of my videos, I talk about the life lessons. This is a huge life lesson that we need to teach people. It's never over. Especially I think a lot of pole vault coaches deal with high school, college athletes. Everyone under the sun keeps talking about graduation. Oh, you just got to graduate. You'll get your degree. And you don't graduate college and now you're retired. Spend the rest of your days on the beach. No, you got to go to work now. The real stuff starts. And so the same way in the pole vault, we could kind of give people a microdose of this. Great, you achieved your goal, you PR'd. Great, you achieved your goal, you broke the school record. Well, tomorrow you got to come back in and we still got to train. Just like in life, you graduate college, great, now you have to go get a job. You got the promotion at your job, great, you still got to show up to work on time the next day. It doesn't stop. And this is where it's like, if we have that humble mentality, we know that we just have to keep showing up and keep going to work. And this is why, again, in the pole vault, I really wish people would start to think about it a little bit differently. We got to stop hero worshiping just the people who jump high, all right? And if they're not humble, coaches need to humble them. Because they need to know. At the end of the day, look, no one cares how high you jump. No one cares about the titles. But people do care if you show up. Do you put the work in? Are you dependable? Are you consistent? That's what really matters. That's one of the things that we're supposed to be teaching through this sport. Not about this fake glory. I always tell people all the time, last thing I want is 20, 30 years from now, you're still talking about counties. Nobody cares. But if you actually took the time, you really trained hard, you pushed the limits, you learned these life skills that I'm talking about in this video and many others, those are the things you carry with you the rest of your life. Not the medals, not the wins. That's not really that important. It's about the lessons you learn. Well, have a good week, everybody.